on down when you hear that sound. Come on down, there's a fire underground. Come on down when you hear that sound. Come on down.
Welcome to another episode of Something Came from Baltimore. I'm your host, Tom Gauker, and I'm happy to speak on the phone today with Laila Biali. The album that we're talking about is called Out of Dust. It just hit the stores March 27th. And it is awesome. If you're stuck in the house right now, I totally recommend this record. The album coincides with her recent health battles and tragic life events that surrounded her. We will talk about that a little in the conversation. But it's beautiful. It's well crafted. Recording, the lyrics are deep, but you would never know it since her delivery is so clean and bright. The music to me sounds very similar to like a Swing Out Sister, Amy Grant, Lisa Stansfield. It's a spring record that's made to be played loud with the windows down. It's a weird contradiction, and we'll get to the bottom of that. Before we welcome Laila Biali, I just want to mention that Something Came from Baltimore is Labor of Love podcast. I'm such a music fan, and I want to share these interviews with you. It's an independent podcast, and there is no revenue stream attached to this project. Hopefully someday out there, someone who's listening, I hope that we can connect. But today, I'm reaching out to you to tip and to help our support our efforts. Venmos is available, and the name is Thomas Gauker, Gouker. If you don't have the money, and I know the times are tough, subscribe to the podcast, make comments, and rate Something Came from Baltimore. Help drive future advertisers to the podcast. First, let's take a listen to Laila Biali, first single off the Out of Dust album. This one's called Sugar.
Sugar, because I'm so tired. Sugar, because I'm uninspired. Sugar, because it works so fast. Sugar so sweet, it's gonna help me last.
So welcome to Something Came from Baltimore again.
Yay! Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled. You know, I love Baltimore.
Yeah, I did talk to you on March 3rd. Your album didn't even hit the streets yet. Your album just is launching and you have a pandemic on your hands. How are you handling that as an artist?
Right, now we get kind of the retrospective, right? Because you and I spoke at the outset before this was really a thing, and now here we are in the thick of it. It's been challenging, if I'm honest, but, you know, I also value that I can still share my music with listeners via talks like this with you and also online. And while we very much miss sharing the music live from physical stages, we're trying to find a way to create virtual stages. And so I've launched a quarantine series. I just launched the first video today, actually, to reach listeners and stay connected, because without those connections, you know, why do I even do what I do, right? For me, it's all about connection.
And Out of Dust to me is a great spring record. When I talked to you the first time, I was very keen on talking about how I feel that your production value is very clean, and it kind of reminds me of like Swing Out Sister and Amy Grant and Loose Ends. It has that. And I said, well, the album is very, like, really done well. And you're talking about really intense things about your life, but you can't really tell until you dig in. And now I've dug in. I would change my review. You know, there's more intense things going on that I wasn't unaware as a casual listener. So, and I really appreciate the fact that you have real musicians playing with you.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Over the years, I've built up quite a stable of like incredible musicians, and I mean that's not even the right word, because I'm the one who's very blessed to be in their midst. You know, because they're so these guys are and gals are Grammy winners, and you know Lisa Fisher. I mean, she's legendary. She sang with the Stones for 25 years, and with Luther Vandross when he was still alive. And then on the jazz side of things, you know, you've got Larnell Lewis, this drummer who is touring with Snarky Puppy, and so he plays drums along with my husband, Ben Whitman, who co-produced the album. And yeah, the list goes on. So thank you for highlighting the musicians. They're such an important part of why the music reads as it does.
Out of the Dust is it just documents your recent health battles and life events. I know that most of these songs are about those, and you were also diagnosed with 2 autoimmune disorders, and you were healing from those. And how are you feeling with autoimmune disorders?
It's very kind of you to ask. We're still in the thick of it. I kind of imagine that now, mid-pandemic, or, who knows where we're at in terms of the length of this ordeal we find ourselves in. I feel like a lot of people are kind of having their own experiences of loss of all kinds, whether it's loss of work, loss of dreams, loss of health, perhaps, maybe even loss of life in some instances. Someone close to you succumbs to the virus. And so in that sense, I feel now that everyone around me can relate to what I was going through during that time when I was writing those songs. But I always kept my eyes fixed on that light at the end of the tunnel. I know it can sound a little cliche, but I have always believed that everything gets worked together for good, that, we will come out the other side of this better. I know it's so hard to imagine right now because we really are in the thick of the storm. In a way, the writing of the songs for Out of Dust was also a way of urging myself forward and not getting stuck in the despair. I had to find those threads of hope. And that's why I wanted to share this record, as originally planned, because people said, maybe you should delay the release when they saw that the entire tour would get postponed, indefinitely. But I just really felt strongly that these songs had something important to say for people in the midst of this time, because they do come out of hardship, real, genuine hardship. And yeah, we're still in the thick of it. My husband and I'm still trying to find health solutions. And, I've had to adjust to, a new way of life in some ways regarding my own health. But you adjust and then you move forward, And I am an optimist by nature, so perhaps it's easier for me to do that than others. But that doesn't mean the pain was any less real and that the struggle has been any less real.
Yeah, I remember I wrote down you're a Libra, so that means you're a caregiver. That's why you're optimistic. And but what was Ben's sign? Because I can't remember if we talked about it the first time. I mean, you guys been together for a really long time, but it's time to find out if you're compatible or not. What's his sign?
He is a Scorpio, and he's actually giving me a little sign outside the window here that he needs his phone back in 10 minutes. But we're good. We've got time. No worries. So tell me about Scorpio.
Scorpios and Libras, they're not the best. They're okay. A Libra is fair and balanced. They'll always look at the optimistic side of everything. A Scorpio is tried and true until you they feel that they've been jilted or they've been wronged, and once they're wronged, they're not gonna be as open anymore.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I'll have to bear that in mind as his wife, right?
Well, I mean, at this
be
point,
careful.
At this point, you've probably been through everything in and a half. So.
Yeah, it's true.
I did ask you a question about working in theater. I feel that you had like a theater quality voice.
When we took this music out on tour prior to the release, we did a pre-release tour. People would come up to me after shows, suggest that I become a speaker. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so that was really interesting to hear. But I've always had an affinity for theater. I mean, I fell in love with music theater in particular when I was a young teenager. It's an interesting world. I think that I will probably co-write a musical with somebody at some point.
She was born in Southern Ontario, a daughter of the land. And even though it was mid-January, she held the sunflower in each hand. All her days were filled with...
Yeah, let's get into this album, and so we can give this phone back to your husband.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't want to be on his bad.
I
don't want to be on his bad side. So on 2016, Gregory Porter had Take Me to the Alley. And that was the name of that album. And he has a new album slowly coming out soon. This is a showstopper for you because I went online on YouTube and there's a beautiful version of you doing it right around that time period, and now it's included on this album, and it's just as equally as beautiful. What's your thoughts on that, and how did that evolve, and what a great song to pick.
Take me to the alley. Take me to the afflicted ones. Take me to the lonely ones who somehow lost their way. Let them hear me say, I am your friend. Come to my table. Rest here in my garden.
Yeah, so the album is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, Wendy Nellis, who passed away in 2018, and she loved Gregory Porter, as do I, and she asked if I would organize her memorial service, and so I actually chose that song for the memorial. And then when we were going into the studio, the night before we were scheduled to go to the studio here in Toronto to begin recording, I turned to my husband, Ben, and said, hey, you know, what if we included Take Me to the Alley as a cover? You know, at that point I knew I was dedicating the record to Wendy, and we had a sense of how the songs were working together as a piece, and it just fit right in. So, you know, I'm really glad that made the cut as a cover song, because the sentiment of the song, which is all about, you know, caring for the people who are in the margins of society, it fits the theme of the album and the heart of the album. And he is such a brilliant songwriter. I'm such a fan. And I laughed when I saw that he released a single called Revival, because I have a single, you know, on my record called Revival as well. And I just thought, oh my gosh, you know, we're kind of vibrating in a similar space right now, whether he knows it or not.
Down when you hear that sound. Come on down, there's a fire blowing round. Come on down when you hear that sound. Come on down, there's a fire.
Another song that I really enjoy is Broken Vessel, and I'm hearing Overjoyed by Stevie Wonder. Just
Yes.
yeah. I'm very proud that I was able to identify it the first time, but now I look for it and listen to it every time I play it.
Yes, I will sing this song, 'cause you rescue me, help me to see through the unknown. You carry me home when darkness holds on.
And I have to tell you, my husband had to kind of move me a little bit away from Stevie, because the original melody, you know, I had written was, you rescue me. So it was even closer to Overjoyed. And he said, no, you have to change that, because you can't cop Stevie Wonder. You have to make it your own. You can borrow from him, but you can't directly cop. And he's absolutely right. And so, but that song is in there in those choruses. And of course the verses are there in their own space altogether. They depart from Stevie's sound. But that album, or that song rather, is, you know, about how we may be broken, but to borrow from Leonard Cohen, the cracks are where the light gets in. And so there's joy in that. And that's why the spirit of that song is one of being overjoyed. And that's why that was a direct nod to Stevie. And I'm so glad you caught it, because not everybody does. In fact, I think you were the first person I spoke to that caught that reference.
The next song that I wanted to talk about is Glass Houses, which was written with you and your husband, and it was about a family member who had committed suicide. And is that who you were dedicating the album to?
I dedicated it to her as well. So her name was Kitty Leach. So the album is dedicated to both Wendy Nellis and Kitty Leach. Wendy succumbed to kidney cancer, and Kitty took her own life back in 2015. Yeah, and that's what that song is about. It was, the lyrics come from a poem my husband wrote that he actually kept from me, and not intentionally, but it was just his own way of processing her death, which was a huge deal for his side of the family. Very, very tragic. And he also wrote the very catchy kind of piano line that you hear in the left hand and the hook in the chorus. And, at the time when he initially sent me the musical idea, I couldn't find a lyric. I kept trying to come up with a lyric to go with the music. And then it was when I was, back home and working on pre-production with Ben that he pulled out this poem and said, hey, maybe this is what this song is about. And so I took his poem and set it to my own melody and kind of adjusted the lyrics a little bit. And it's actually one of my favorite songs on the record.
Alpha Waves has a great layering of your vocals. It's just a really beautiful recording. Can you talk a little more about that song also?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that song is all about being in kind of a trippy, tired, meditative space. When I was writing this music, I was at the Banff Center for Arts and Creativity in the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, Canada. And I'm someone who just doesn't sleep. I'm an insomniac. I have been my whole life. And then add to it the elevation in the mountains, and it was even worse. So I was kind of tired while I was trying to get these songs written. And one day, instead of fighting it with, cup after cup of coffee, I kind of went with the feeling, just that dreamy feeling. And I had read once that alpha waves are what the brain generates when you're in a more meditative state, and that they are conducive to creativity. And so I wanted to write a song that might bring the listener into that meditative, dreamy state where they would experience their own alpha waves.
Ah.
Feel the rhythm of the waves flowing quietly inside your brain. Gentle frequencies that sing peacefulness into your mind. They bring.
One more song. You have a 9-year-old son help you to take the day off. It's the final song on the record. And what was his contribution? How involved was he? And did he get bored with it and say, "Okay, Mom, I'm done with this song"? Like, did he follow? Did he follow it all the way to the end?
His contribution was that beautiful hook that you hear on the log drum or tongue drum, which is a pitched African instrument that has a very beautiful sound, and you can hear it being played by a mallet. And I actually played the ostinato for the recorded version on the album. But if you do a search, of my name and Quarantunes, if you're on Facebook and you look up Take the Day Off, you will find the three of us in our pajamas. This is at the very beginning of the pandemic when we were all in lockdown in mid-March. And we did our Quarantunes performance of Take the Day Off. And Joshua, who's now 9, really holds down that part. He does such a good job, and we're so proud of him. He's done a few live stream concerts with us now. And and that's always a real highlight. And I'm excited to write more music with him because he's definitely a creative. And my gosh, you should hear him play the piano. It's really quite extraordinary. So that's the first official co-write to our name, our family name. But I have no doubt there will be more.
I thank you
Awesome.
very much for talking to me about your beautiful album. Again, it's called Out of Dust. Laila Biali, thank you for talking to me on Something Came from Baltimore.
Thank you for having me, Tom. It's such a pleasure.